Welcome in to PEC Match Point, your premier destination for news around the PEC. We've got a packed show today, so make sure you stick around. We've got highlights from everything you need to know about the Power Esports Conference, the premier FBS Esports Conference in the country. Of course, big shout out to the Idaho Air National Guard for making the show happen. Again, we've got a big show today, some massive games that we need to take a look at as we will go around the PEC, give you highlights from Week 5. Utah Overwatch team catching fire. We'll see what they did against Syracuse. Then we'll go inside the PEC. We've talked a lot about League of Legends, the new affiliate title for the Power Esports Conference. We'll give you a standings update. We had an undefeated showdown between Syracuse and Minnesota. We'll tell you who came out on top of that. Plus, we'll look ahead to Week 6 in the PEC. We've got some massive Overwatch games and a big change, of course. We'll tell you all about that. But first, let's look back at Week 5, and we'll start with Rocket League, and we'll start with Boise State. The Broncos faced off against red-hot Minnesota. The Gophers, though, unfortunately came crashing back down after a 2-game win streak. Boise State, though, had to hold on. The Gophers made Game 1 a close affair, with Boise State winning just 3-2. Game 2, Boise State's offense came alive. Dirt, though, led the way with the Broncos, putting in 3 goals in a 6-0 win for Boise State. Facing a potential sweep, Minnesota roared back to life. The Gophers got the game tied in regulation and 90 seconds into overtime before this happened.
Complete aggressive play coming out from Minnesota. Lots of bumps, lots of demos, lots of action. They're keeping the Broncos at bay, but the Broncos still trying to push in for that goal right there. Passed over. Preston trying to seize the shot, getting blocked away by Pye. Woozy not making it there in time before the defensive play was made by Minnesota, but here's the flipper. He said, pass over to Preston, who makes the goal and closes Game 3.
Ohio State and Nebraska, they met up in a Big Ten clash, and the two teams battled to the very end. Ohio State picked up a 3-1 win, but it was a very hard-fought series. The teams traded shutouts through the first two games, and then Ohio State held on 3-2, 4-3 to take the series. Bungo and Danwad both put in 4 goals for the Buckeyes. For Nebraska, a tough loss, but they had a lot to show for it. Creed, Rocket League, led the way. He had 4 goals for the Cornhuskers. This was a very, very tight series, despite the 3-1 scoreline. A couple other things in Rocket League, Syracuse and Utah. That game's actually been rescheduled. They're going to play tonight, so a bit of a doubleheader for some of those squads. And then Baylor and Kansas. Of course, Baylor continued their perfect season. The Bears took care of business against Kansas. They are now 12-0. Only 4 games separate them in a perfect regular season. For the Jayhawks, the loss means now there's only a game ahead of them, or they're only a game ahead of Ohio State for that 5th spot in the standings. So a massive series there, but Baylor, again, looking very, very incredible. We take a look at how week to week went in Rocket League for the PEC here in Week 5. Of course, as we said, a couple of sweeps. Boise State, Baylor, Ohio State picking up the 3-1 win, and then Syracuse and Utah. That was rescheduled to the 23rd. We take a look at the standings, of course, with Michigan State on the bye. Baylor's up at the top. Boise State right behind them. A little bit of ground between the Broncos and sort of Syracuse, Michigan State, that top 4. Of course, 2 of those squads going to be in action later tonight. We'll tell you about that. Moving on into Overwatch, however, we had a massive game as Utah, the red-hot team, drew one of their toughest challengers yet as they squared off against Syracuse in a top 4 battle. Utah jumped on the orange early, taking both Game 1 and Game 2 as they edge out just a 3-2 win in Game 2. Syracuse held off the sweep. They won Game 3, forced the Utes to a Game 4. Maybe the Orange can set up a reverse sweep of their own. The Utes, however, refuse to blink. It's a chance for a massive win in the spring. Utah's been undefeated so far, and were they able to close out the Orange? Carson Cass tells us what happened.
The other end, it's going to be a good start for the Orange. They are able to get rid of one in the form of Sam, but Lunar also goes down. We're again to a fight of smalls. One goes down in the form of Mac. REI does a good job there. Overtime, Orange have to collect it here. They try and get on once more. REI gets rid of 2, B-Dog and Mac. Phenomenal gameplay. Saint will back off, trying to go once more. He'll get back on the site just in time. Lucio is not there to clutch. 4 seconds. Can they get there? No, they cannot. And Utah, a clean sweep on Flashpoint.
Utah picks up the win, and while 3rd and 4th place battle it out, Boise State, they got another rewarding sweep. The Broncos took down Minnesota 3-0. Boise State had an excellent performance by Strider, a 72-5 score line in the series. With the Utes winning, Boise State continues to hold a very, very slim edge on that 2nd place spot in the PEC, but each sweep makes it harder and harder for anybody to catch them. Kansas got back on the winning side of things with a 3-0 sweep of their own over Baylor. The Jayhawks at 6-5. So for that middle ground team in the PEC, they had a 52-9 performance by My Dog Died, a very great one there. The Jayhawks, most of their roster posting over a 3 KD in the win for Baylor. A tough loss, unfortunately. And wrapping things up, Ohio State and Nebraska. Ohio State maintained their massive lead on that top spot in PEC Overwatch. The Buckeyes took down Nebraska 3-0. Much like the teams behind them, every single time Ohio State gets a sweep, it's harder and harder to pass them. They now have a 2-game lead on everybody in the loss column in the PEC, with Utah taking down Syracuse. We take a look at how the week went overall. Again, sweeps across the board from who you'd expect. Boise State and Ohio State. Kansas getting one there as well. And Utah kind of announcing themselves as that new top 3 with that 3-1 win over Syracuse. We take a look at now how the standings look after that game. Again, look at all those 3s in the loss column right behind Ohio State. Boise State 9-3, Utah 9-3, Syracuse 7-3. A couple games to make up for the Orange. They had some early buys, but if Ohio State doesn't lose, that top spot is not going to be catchable. So we'll see if anybody can knock the Buckeyes down. Moving on into Valorant, Boise State Valorant, they continue to tear through the spring season with a league-leading 13th win under their belt. They're looking for more as they played it off against Minnesota. The Gophers, though, did not go down without a fight. Boise State won game 1 in the series 13-7, and the Gophers did an even better job trying to get to that match point in game 2. They needed a few more rounds to force overtime. Minnesota wanted to be that spoiler, but Boise State, the top team in PEC Valorant, they didn't want to play any more rounds.
So hard to push into this medal as well. So difficult. Master, knowing all he needs to do is hit one bullet for them to die. Master, over the top, they're behind him, but he gets the first, clears out the rest, and now everything falling apart for Minnesota. Only one player, and Zephyr to do it. Zephyr, 2 kills, still alive towards heaven's skies, but it's Prestige. The closer closes it out. Match MVP, why not Prestige? What a...
Boise State picking up a win. Utah, they've been quietly trying to chase that top 3 spot. They took on Syracuse, and they did just enough to stop a Syracuse team that's building a lot of momentum quietly in the spring. The Utes won game 1, 13-7 with a game-high 24 kills from on stage. In game 2, Syracuse nearly extended the series. They got it to 12-11, but on stage made sure it didn't go any further. He picks up 49 kills overall in the series as the Utes win. Meanwhile, for the Orange, they had a great series from Prez, who nearly pulled his team back into a game 3. He had 43 kills of his own. Kansas, they picked up a sweep over Baylor 2-0. Game 1, back and forth. The Jayhawks held on in a 13-10 nail-biter. A solid performance. 4 members of the squad posting positive KDs. Derry dropped a game-high 29 for Baylor, but it wasn't enough. Game 2, Kansas made sure Derry wasn't going to have any more magic. He was held to only 10 kills as the Jayhawks picked up the sweep. And Ohio State, they got back on their winning ways. The Buckeyes dispatched Nebraska 2-0 in a sweep, 13-5, 13-7. Strong team performance for the Buckeyes. All 3 players on their team posted over 30 kills. For Nebraska, Geo Magics had a great game, 22 kills in game 2 in particular, but it's so hard to individually take down this Ohio State team. As we take a look at the results from Valorant this week in the PEC, again, a lot of those top teams picking up sweeps. We've talked about it a lot. The more sweeps you can get, the better you're looking in those tiebreaker categories. And watch out for Utah. Michigan State on the bye has to worry about the Utes in their rearview mirror. As we take a look at the Valorant standings, of course, you've got 2 teams at the top, Boise State and Ohio State. That showdown is going to be epic here in a few weeks. And then Michigan State and Utah are neck and neck as well. These top 4 teams are very, very close. Utah's been making some noise. I'm curious to see what happens. Moving on to Smash as we rack up week 5. It was sort of a reverse of their Rocket League matchup. Boise State came into this one as the red-hot team, trying to rise up the standings, but the third-place Gophers ended things in a hurry. A 2-0 sweep for Minnesota. It was pretty close. Minnesota held on to win game 1, 14-9. Grizzhawk shut the door in the final match, beating Mata 14-2 to snuff out any chance of tiebreaker. In game 2, the Gophers caught fire quickly. A pair of 4-2 wins in the first 2 matches, and CNAM shut the door, winning it before we even got to a match 4 to take down Boise State. Kansas and Baylor, they had a fantastic week of PE Smash as well. It was quite an interesting 3-game series. Not something you see too often. The Jayhawks did just enough. They won game 1, 12-10. And then the series got kind of weird. Baylor picked up a quick 16-8 in game 2. All 4 Bears won their games. And then in game 3, the Jayhawks, however, they left no doubt. So they dominated game 3. Absolutely the first 3 members of their team picking up wins. Mander drops a perfect set, and in the final match of the night, playing for Just Pride, Rister Mice looked to join his teammate with a perfect set of his own.
That's Wi-Fi min-min, baby. Don't know if actually, because maybe a little bit weak DI, but still, that's with the powered up dragon, that's very strong.
We're min-min.
And now we're 50%, almost reach that. Very narrowly dodges out of that. Shields the side, he's just desperate for a kill, and that'll do it.
Hang up the controller!
That'll do it. A quick game 3 after this long set against Baylor.
Very close set overall. It was a 2-1 set.
Yeah, 2-1.
Again, the Cornhuskers do just enough to keep that second place spot. They swept through Ohio State 2-0 after dominating Game 1 16-6 with all 4 Cornhuskers winning. Game 2 got pretty close. Beaton and Scorcho both won the final 2 matches for Ohio State. However, Nebraska took just enough to hold on for an 11-10 win and grab the sweep. Again, this Cornhuskers team, they keep winning, but the wins aren't always pretty. We take a look at the results for Smash this past week. Again, a sweep from Minnesota, a sweep from Nebraska, even though it was very close, and then Kansas and Baylor playing a fun little 3-game series. We take a look at the standings here. It's been really, really tight atop the standings. We got Michigan State. They're still perfect. They had a bye this week. Again, that team looks really strong, but then Nebraska, they've now joined them all of a sudden with 10 wins. Minnesota's right there at 8-2, and then Syracuse, that last of the top 4 at 6-4, but then you got Kansas and Boise State. They've been battling back and forth. Been a ton of fun in this one. Moving on to League of Legends. We told you, again, an affiliate title in the spring. It's been a lot of fun. Give you a quick standings update. Minnesota and Utah had an epic undefeated showdown this week in a battle of 3-0 squads. It went all 3 games, and shout out to Minnesota's AD carry, Ian. He went absolutely bananas in Game 2 and Game 3. A combined 21-4 and 15 scoreline on the Ash and the Zaya to pick up the win, put the Gophers at an undefeated 3-0. You see there, Utah 3-1, Kansas right behind them at 2-1. Ohio State has only played 1 game, but they're still undefeated as well. And then Nebraska, Boise State, and Baylor sort of round out that. So we'll keep you up to date on those. But League of Legends, been a ton of fun. Been an absolute blast to watch here in the PEC. But we're going to take a quick break here on PEC Match Point. When we come back, we're going to look ahead to Week 6. Remember, there are massive Overwatch changes coming this week as all 5 heroes are legal, and we couldn't have asked for a better schedule for that to happen. We'll tell you all the details coming up next on PEC Match Point.
Now earn up to 4 times the rewards with the ICCU Premier Rewards Visa credit card. It's the credit card from the credit union you love.
My friends know me as Derek, but I'm also Master Sergeant Raxter. This is my life in the Air National Guard.
How does it look so far?
Right in my house.
Comfortable?
Yes.
Times and places all in who you share them with. Joy,
I got in.
who you share it with.
This is a great use of your own equity.
Who you share it with.
Since you guys have been in here, some things have changed. We've updated this place to be in its final form. New cabinets, new counters, all sorts of new stuff in here. This has turned into a place that wouldn't look out of place at an SEC or Big Ten football facility, and Dairy West has allowed us to have it here. We've taken a holistic approach to our player nutrition, and we're really thankful that Dairy West has made sure that our fueling station is the best in college esports and really at industry standard for any college athletic department.
Attention please, about to start the show, better take your seats. It's time to let the curtain rise, we're gonna shake the room, we're gonna
Now earn up to 4 times the rewards with the ICCU Premier Rewards Visa credit card. It's the credit card from the credit union you love.
Scott Matlock, underrated recruit, has built himself into one of the best defensive players in the Mountain West.
What would you do if you couldn't fail? Would you see every setback as a catalyst to keep going? This is the innovator's mindset, because innovation demands daring. It's finding thousands of ways that don't work, and the one that changes everything. It's when your unrelenting spirit sees the world's needs and says, I will create something better. So, what will you do? Will you let your genius run wild? Give yourself the space to be great? Set your sights on something even bigger, because we know changing the world doesn't happen by chance. It comes out of the blue.
By the Idaho Air National Guard. If you want more from around the Power Esports Conference, make sure you head over to the official PEC website for everything you need. We've got power rankings, player profiles, predictions, analysis on the biggest matchups of the season. Stay informed, stay connected, and stay ahead with all things PEC at pec.leagueos.gg. Well, we look ahead to the upcoming Week 6 in PEC. We've got some massive matchups on the board, starting with Rocket League. Boise State and Syracuse kick things off in a rematch of their epic fall series, where the Broncos held on to take a very tight 3-2 series. Boise State, they remain strongly entrenched in the second place spot in the standings. Syracuse, they have some ground to make up. The Broncos have played 2 more games in the Orange so far, so there'll be some chances there. A win for Boise State almost surely locks up that second spot. Well, the Orange maybe could start a late season push if they can finish the job this time against Boise State. Remember, that series in the fall was absolutely fun. I think this one is going to be just as good. Michigan State, they're right behind Syracuse, only a half game back, and this could be their chance to maybe surge into that third place spot. They get a feisty Jayhawks team that has proven to be a tough out so far, that they've yet to finish the job against one of those top 4 teams in the standings, with the likes of Ohio State making a late season push. Kansas would love nothing more than a win here, build a little bit more space between them and that bottom half of the standings. Baylor's perfect season, it moves on to Minnesota after a fantastic last few weeks of play, of course. The Gophers hit a bit of a speed bump last week. They were swept by Boise State, but as we saw earlier in the show, that series was a lot closer than maybe a sweep would indicate. They gave Boise State everything they could handle in a pair of 1-goal games. The Bears, they've looked incredible so far this season. They don't show a sign of slowing down, but if the Gophers can play like they did last week, maybe the series is a little bit closer than you might expect. In Ohio State and Utah, they will wrap up Week 6 of PEC Rocket League. Both teams, they've had a couple of heartbreaking 3-2 loss series earlier in the spring, and you wonder what could have been if those maybe had gone their way. And now it's a chance to maybe prove that they can still turn things around. The Buckeyes, they have Kansas in their sights. Maybe could run the Jayhawks down for that 5th place spot, while Utah, they're in this sort of logjam themselves. Minnesota, Nebraska, all kind of battling to get out of the bottom of the standings. Moving into Overwatch, remember we talked about it. After 2 weeks of waiting, all 5 brand new heroes are coming in legal for play this week in the PEC, and that could shake things up. And what a better time to do it, as all 4 top 4 teams in PEC Overwatch are paired up against each other, and it's going to be absolute fireworks. Boise State and Syracuse, they kick things off. It's a rematch from last fall, where the Orange sort of announced themselves when they picked up a win over Boise State. But the Broncos have been strong ever since. They remain in second place in the spring over Utah and Syracuse, and they've already avenged one of their losses in the fall when they swept Kansas a few weeks ago. They're going to look to do the same against Syracuse. And top-ranked Ohio State, they face off against a red-hot Utah squad who has not lost a series in the spring. Ohio State, they've got a 2-game lead on the rest of the PEC. They beat Utah. They almost guarantee themselves that top spot. But if the Utes pull off the win, all of a sudden PEC Overwatch is absolutely wide open. These two played all the way back in week 1 of the fall, where Ohio State won 3-1. But I don't think this is the same Utah team. This is going to be a lot of fun. And again, 5 new heroes. Cannot wait to see what gets brought to the table. Baylor and Minnesota, they'll wrap things up with the new hero introductions as these 2 squads face off. At times, these teams have shown flashes. With the meta surely being shaken up, a win here for either team could be the start of maybe a late season push heading into Vegas. Moving on into Valorant, Ohio State and Utah. Valorant face off. The Utes, they've kind of done a great job. They beat everybody in the lower half of the PEC. They've had a couple of strong showings against the better teams in the PEC. They took Michigan State and Boise State to 3 games earlier this year, but they still need that signature win. For Ohio State, the Buckeyes, they already had their one slip-up a few weeks ago. They cannot afford another one if they want to chase down Boise State and keep their shot of a number 1 seed intact. Boise State and Syracuse going to battle out, and what should be a solid test for the Broncos. At 13-1, Boise State, they've been running through the PEC this spring, but this is a Syracuse team that gave Ohio State a 3-game series a few weeks ago. They've proven they have the potential to slow down some of these top teams. I think they're a lot better than their record shows, and I think this is going to be an absolute fun series and maybe another 3-game series. We'll have to see. Michigan State, they're the defending PEC champs, and they come off a bye. They're going to face a very solid Kansas roster. The Spartans, they've been riding high after they knocked Ohio State down from the ranks of the unbeaten a few weeks ago in a win over Kansas and a Utah loss. maybe just kind of locks in a top 3 spot for the defending champs. For Kansas, though, this is a team, once again, they've done a great job, like Kansas has done in almost every single PEC game. They're right in the middle in a lot of these titles of they beat the teams below them, they give the teams above them a little bit of a harder time. We'll see if maybe Kansas can pick up that signature win over the defending champ Michigan State. And Baylor and Minnesota, they wrap up the week as squads who've shown a lot of promise at times. They'll meet up. The Bears, they've had some of their strongest individual performances in the PEC week after week. They nearly took Kansas to 3 games. This squad is very talented. And for Minnesota, the Gophers, much like Baylor, they've had strong showings despite being swept by Boise State. They nearly got that to a game 3. They had it at 12-9 at one point, and this maybe starts a late season run. And we round things up with Smash as Boise State, their 2-game winning streak came to an end last week against Minnesota. And now they face their second straight top 4 squad as the Broncos face off against Syracuse. The Orange, they've had a tough time so far this spring, only a 1-2 record so far to show for it. They hope to end the season strong, and that could start with a showdown against Boise State. Baylor's going to meet up with a red-hot Minnesota squad who the Gophers maybe can run down Nebraska for a top 2 spot in PEC Smash. Bears, they had a great series last week against Kansas, a 3-game series before it kind of just fell a little flat. And for Minnesota, they had a strong sweep against Boise State. And again, as we've talked about a lot, it's not just how you win. You just need to make sure you pick up those sweeps, right? A 2-1 feels good, but a 2-0 is even better. And I think the Gophers need to do that if they want a shot at a top 2 spot. And the undisputed Michigan State Spartans, they're going to put their perfect record line against Kansas. The Jayhawks had a win against Baylor. Wasn't pretty, but that final game, you kind of saw what they're maybe capable of with 4 straight wins, including a pair of perfect games. We'll see if they're enough to give the Spartans a challenge as Michigan State. They've looked great so far, but nobody's taken them to a game 3. You don't know what happens if all of a sudden the Jayhawks make some noise. Again, week 6 of the PEC, looking to have some massive matchups across the board. Should be a ton of fun. Again, Baylor and Minnesota, that one should be a blast. I think Rocket League's going to be closer than maybe some people are expecting. This Minnesota squad pretty talented. Michigan State, they're taking on Kansas. I think the Spartans, they just need to pick up some solid wins in Valorant and Smash to kind of keep the momentum going in their direction. This is one of the big ones in Overwatch, Boise State and Syracuse, and in Rocket League as well. That should be a ton of fun. And then in Valorant and in Overwatch, Utah and Ohio State. Again, I think the Overwatch games are going to be must-watch for Ohio State, Utah, for Boise State, Syracuse. See how the new heroes shape up the meta. Week 6, it's going to be exciting. Again, you've got to watch the Overwatch games. It's the top 4 teams. It's a brand new meta. Cannot wait to see what happens. And again, we've got some sneaky good Rocket League. We've got some sneaky good Valorant. And Smash is always a ton of fun. So make sure you tune into that. But if you don't get a chance to, we'll catch you up on all the action around the league here on PEC Match Point. Again, head over to pec.leagueos.gg for everything Power Esports Conference. PEC Match Point brought to you by the Idaho Air National Guard. Good luck to all the teams, and we'll see everybody next week.